For more than 2 decades, Brittany Frederick has covered television from inside the industry, reporting directly on the writers, actors, and showrunners. Justified was one of her favorite shows.
So basically, I was one of the people that covered Justified on a weekly basis. I was doing reviews of every episode. I was doing interviews with cast members and producers. I was freelancing for about 6 or 7 different places because at that point you're just trying to get a foothold, trying to get an audience in the business. And so I was, anything that had to do with Justified, I was there. And I was just one of those beat writers that every week for however many years we were on, I was in the mix. The very first interview that he and I did together, I was not aware that we were doing it. I was at TCA for Justified, and I had done some interviews with the cast. I believe I had talked to Graham, and I had gone to lunch. And then I get one of the FX publicity people going, "Oh, Brittany, you wanted to talk to Elmore, didn't you?" And of course, the answer to that question is yes. And so, completely unprepared, stone cold, I went and did that first interview. And I am nervous as heck. And you're talking about one of the greatest writers that has ever lived, and pull it off to the point where he was gracious enough to talk to me again. I think it was a year or two later. So I love to tell that story because I think it speaks to the quality of a person he was, that he could put me at ease that quickly. And what I remember a lot about that second conversation is we had done the interview and then we started sidetracked because I had mentioned that I'm a fiction writer. That's where I started. I didn't intend to do this as a career. And I was working on a book at the time. And he said to me, completely unprompted, he gave me the phone number of his agent and said, "Call my agent, talk to my agent." I did place that phone call. The guy never called me back, so nothing came of it. But the fact that he was willing to make that gesture for me, that he saw something in me to make that gesture, meant a lot. He saw something in me that I don't think even I saw in myself at that point. This was one of the first shows where everybody kind of looked at me and said, we see that you really care about what we're doing, and they really cared about what they were doing. And so it became this really warm and supportive environment to work in, which is why I stuck with the show all the way to the end. It was like, I know these people, I care about these people, and I know they care about me. Yeah, Graham is from my limited experience with him, I think we only did, I think, 1 or 2 conversations over the run of the show, but I've always been a fan of his work. I think he's incredibly underrated as a storyteller, but you also have to have people on the TV side, the production side, that recognize that voice and the importance of preserving that voice and that have their own unique voice. And Graham was very much that guy. And I have a short list in my head of shows that were formative to not just my career, but I think me as an individual, the shows that I really learned a lot on or will remember. And it's one of those first ones. I think with Justified, what made it work, what Elmore was writing, and then what Graham put together, there was a specificity to it. It wasn't just, here's another adaptation, here's another crime show. Elmore's voice was prevalent throughout that series. All of those actors brought their own very specific voice to what they were playing. Walton, he was so dialed into that character and brought so much creativity to that's what made that work. Graham made that choice and it was a great choice, but it's Walton who really capitalized that and made that character what that is. But there is a lightness to Walton because so many crime shows now, they're trying to force certain elements. Oh, we'll try to have a specific designated comic relief element or comic relief character or comic subplot. We can tell when you're manufacturing it. With Justified, it felt effortless. It felt like its own world that stood on its own, and the personality and the humor came naturally. It wasn't like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to laugh at this right now because this is going to be really serious over here. It just felt like people. The Paley Center did for the final season, the entire run of the show, believe it or not, the one person I never got to talk to was Tim. I tried and I tried and I tried, and FX said, well, we've got to clear it with his publicist. At one point, they even walked me over to his publicist. His publicist was like, yeah, we'll set something up. And it never happened. So it became a running joke between me and Erica Tazzle and Jacob Pitts and Joel Carter that they would always ask me if I'd had a chance to talk to Tim. And I'm like, no. nope. Like I'm still trying. Like they knew how badly I wanted it. This was how personable everybody was. So this very last event, I finally get my chance to talk to him, and I'm in this group with like 4 other reporters, so I don't want to hog the conversation. So I said, I'm going to ask my one question and shut up so that the people next to me can ask their question. So I ask this question, he answers the question, and he looks at me and goes, "Wait, was that it? Did you have another one?" I'm like, "Oh, and we just like lost it laughing. So I finally got to talk to Tim, and then I remember walking into Erica. I think it was Erica, and Joelle. It's like, "Oh, did you do it?" "Yeah, I finally did it. I finally did the very last press event for this entire show. Finally did it." And they were so happy for me. I really loved in City Primeval was when they brought Paul Calderone back as Raymond Cruz, just to have that sort of acknowledgement that, hey, City Primeval was a Raymond Cruz story. That was his story. So it was like, okay, it's nice to have that character represented in this. It works in 2 ways. Number one, it was like, okay, great to have that character there because City Primeval really belongs to that character. It wasn't a Raylan story. So that was important. But also, Paul is just fantastic. To take a story that was very clearly written and intended for a separate character, it just doesn't work. You're taking one character and shoehorning them into somebody else's story. I didn't feel like I was watching a Raylan Gibbons story until I got to that last episode when some of those other legacy characters started to pop up. Then I was like, this is all I wanted. I wanted to go back to the world that Justified built and established and those people. I don't want to just follow Raylan into a world that's very clearly not his. You can't mash those two things together like that. It just does not work. The shows that I think stick with me are the ones where I'm hearing something, feeling something that is very specific to that. You know, whether it's Elmore Leonard, whether it's Aaron Sorkin, who was one of my great influences. You know an Aaron Sorkin show. You know what it sounds like. You know what it looks like. You know what an Elmore Leonard show is. You know what it sounds like. There's nothing else like it. He was so distinct in the way that he wrote dialogue, in the way that he created a sense of an environment that was unique, in the way that he shaped characters. Everything that Elmore did and that Graham wisely, amplified on and then brought himself was very specific to, very unique to that world. And so I think that's it, is when you're watching Justified, you're not just watching a really well-written, well-acted show. You're transported to that place, to that period in time, to the specific sound and feel and rhythm of what that is. Justified never had a formula to begin with. It was just like, this is what this is, take it or leave it. It was so unapologetically itself. That comes through. You can't fake that.